Elon Musk, such a non-problematic guy. He's just trying to build tunnels.
So, it's been a hot minute. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to my humble abode. Where have I been all this time, you may be wondering? Or not. Well, I moved all the way up the country and was couch surfing for 3 months while at university. I then had a mental breakdown and decided to take a gap year, but not before finishing both of my courses. I then moved all the way back down the country and I'm now living in my mum's shed. Yes, it is quite literally a shed. There are 3 holes in the door and the handle's broken, but I decorated the walls so it looks pretty. Oh, and there's a meibomian cyst growing on top of my tear duct and preventing me from seeing out of my right eye. But I'm fine. Actually, no, I'm not fine. I'm Mo. My name is Mo. My mental health has not been great. I have been, as you would say in French, dépression. I've been depressed. I nearly quit YouTube entirely, actually, but I haven't, and I won't. At least not for the time being, because I think I still have more things to say. So without further ado, here is the video you have all been waiting for, the part 2 to my Kalvin Garrah series. Now, if you haven't seen my part 1, I recommend you go and watch that, because otherwise this video is not going to make much sense, but since it has been a while, I will give a quick little recap for those who need it. So, in my part 1, we covered the actions of Kalvin Garrah and had a look at his time on the internet. Kalvin Garrah is a 20-year-old transgender YouTuber who made a name for himself by bullying other trans people because they didn't quite fit his definition of what a real trans person was. But he wouldn't just stop there, he would pick apart everything about them. Their weight, their physical appearance, not many things were off limits for our dear Kalvin. The people he targeted in his videos, some of whom were children, went on to receive some extreme harassment from his fans. They got thousands of hate comments, death threats, they were doxxed and driven from the internet. We covered the stories of Brennen, Ashton Daniel, Lars and Noah, who were victims of Kalvin. Being the strapping young lad that he is, Kalvin falsely accused Lars of faking their disabilities. This led to people calling up government agencies trying to get their disability benefits cancelled.
Little update on our friend Lars. I've heard that they are actually trans-abled now. They are in a wheelchair, but can seemingly perfectly walk. Now I understand, there might be some illnesses out there and stuff where the wheelchair user can actually walk, but it's just like, I don't know why you flex being in a wheelchair. I feel like you want those oppression points, those precious oppression points.
After the harassment they faced, Lars ended up in a psychiatric ward, but during their stay they had another patient spy on them and live blog their time there to Kalvin. It's impossible to know whether Kalvin ever saw those messages that were sent to him, but his content encouraged that type of behaviour. Meanwhile, Kalvin's video on Noah was so bad and the harassment they received so intense, it actually drove them to attempt suicide, which he later went on to mock. So yeah, it's pretty serious. Brennen actually made an entire series on their experience with Kalvin, and Ashton has a really good video as well, so if you want to hear about what happened to them, I've linked their videos in the description below. Just to make sure you have a proper understanding of how bad this was, allow me to play you a short montage of clips. I'm just going to put a wee trigger warning here for transphobia, ableism, fat phobia, and, I don't know, just general perniciousness. I am going to be discussing things that touch on these topics throughout the video, but this clip I'm about to play is something that people might find specifically upsetting, so skip to this timestamp if that's something you don't want to see.
Fuck a fat queer! Yeah, bitch! Oh yeah, I'm gonna go off today. Fuck a fat queer! I don't understand fat people that act like being fat is a personality trait, and they act like it's their, personality to be fat. So it's like, we're gonna see a lot of that here. I get the image description is for people who have, bad eyesight, but it's like, I don't know why you're on Instagram if you're blind anyways. I love just how retarded she is, it's my favorite thing about her. Also, I would bet at least $20 that as soon as I click the video, this guy's gonna have the tranny voice.
Yeah, so that's not a very good look, is it? This is the behaviour I would expect from a high school bully with a little bit too much power for his own good, not of a criminal justice major and aspiring lawyer. And to be quite frank, I've seen high school bullies with more decorous comportment than Kalvin here, so perhaps it is unfair on them to make such a comparison. Kalvin did all of this in the name of transmedicalism. He wanted to spread his ideology and combat the crazy SJWs who were spreading misinformation. He was so steadfast in his beliefs that he justified the harassment of innocent people. But it was for a cause! He was raising awareness for what it was really like to be transgender. Transmedicalism is a dangerous ideology. It perpetuates harmful, outdated ideas for what it means to be transgender, and it actively goes against the medical consensus. The definition of transmedicalism varies depending on who you ask. Some people are more extreme than others, but in essence it is the belief that you have to have gender dysphoria and medically transition, or at least want to medically transition, in order to be transgender. Many transmedicalists don't believe in the existence of non-binary people, and many will go out of their way to harass gender non-conforming trans people. However, that is not going to be the focus of this video. Today we're going to focus on the actions of Kalvin Garrah, because regardless of whether or not you subscribe to his ideology, his actions were undoubtedly very dangerous. If you do want to hear me debunk transmedicalism though, stick around, because that is the topic of my next video. But what has Kalvin done in response to being called out on his actions? Fuck all, really. In fact, Kalvin Garrah's response to the situation has pretty much been a step-by-step guide of what not to do when you get called out for a bunch of really serious stuff. I think the way that influencers respond to backlash is very interesting. I think the way that people misuse their power, weaponizing their platform to spread misinformation and start harassment campaigns, is very worrying. I think the way we just allow people to get away with causing such immeasurable harm is incredibly concerning. This video will be split up into two parts. In part one, I'm going to talk about what happened after I released my video. In the second part, I'm going to talk about my own experiences and how transmedicalism affected me, a non-binary transgender person. So, let's get into part one. Part one. Kalvin's response. The Twitter fallout. I published my video about Kalvin Garrah on the 15th of January, and it almost immediately began to pick up traction. I didn't really know what to make of the situation, and I had no idea what to expect. But if you'd asked me to write down a list of things I thought might happen, Kalvin Garrah DMing me and then following me on Twitter would have been near the bottom. But alas, that is precisely what happened. The same day I released my video, Kalvin determined it wise to log on to Twitter and, quote, tweet Brennen. Brennen Beckwith is a non-binary trans man, and they were the first person that Kalvin specifically targeted on his channel. The video Kalvin made about them was his most viewed video, and after the success Kalvin was met with, he decided to make that form of content his brand. That video included gems such as this.
So it looks like we're gonna be calling you she. So when she's done playing dress up and pretending like she has a mental illness, I can think of maybe why you hate your body, and I don't think it's because you're trans. That's because you like attention. Oh my god, that's definitely a trender pose. Like, if you see someone who goes like this, they're definitely a transgender.
So as I said, Kalvin thought it wise to quote tweet Brennen. Even though Brennen had blocked him on every single other platform and explicitly said they didn't want to engage with him individually. I've noticed people don't tend to want to interact with someone who publicly humiliated them and spearheaded the harassment they faced. Can't imagine why. So Brennen is my friend. My fern friend. You gotta stick up for the homies, right? So when I saw this, I got a little bit angry, and I decided to quote tweet Kalvin. Now, I have quite bad ADHD. Twitter is probably not a very good place for me to be. I'm very impulsive, I'll just say what's on my mind. That's why I like making videos so much. I can really plan out and think about what I have to say and make sure that what I'm putting out there is reasonable, respectful, responsible, and rambunctious. Twitter Mo is none of that. Twitter Mo has none of the same grace that YouTube Mo has. Twitter Mo is wild, Twitter Mo is feral. So anyway, me and Kalvin had this little interaction that I'll put up on screen now. I tweeted at him asking why he still had videos public on his channel in which he claimed Lars was faking their disabilities. He said he would look at the video and potentially take it down or remove the section where he talked about Lars's disabilities. He did no such thing, and to this day that video is still up. Kalvin recently did a debate with a YouTuber called Goddammit Malcolm. Recommend you check him out. But anyway, in this debate, Kalvin claims that he has taken down the section of the video that he claims Lars is faking their disabilities. But I checked and he hasn't, so that's a lie. I'll play the clips for you now.
I think that people make it out to be far more abhorrent than it really was.
When you make a video insinuating that somebody is faking their disability and literally shitting on just how they look.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. That part of the video about Lars where I was ignorant to people with EDS and being in a wheelchair part-time, it was a terrible joke. It was not a joke at all. It is taken out of the video. That part of the video is taken out.
Why don't you just take down the whole video?
But Lars is a special case because, little update on our friend Lars, I've heard that they are actually trans-abled now. They are in a wheelchair, but can seemingly perfectly walk. Now I understand, you know, there might be some illnesses out there and stuff where the wheelchair user can actually walk, but it's just like, I don't know why you flex being in a wheelchair. I feel like you want those oppression points, those precious oppression points.
Yeah, so much for I've taken them out of the video, huh? Why would you lie about that, man? It's so easy to fact check. What? Those false claims about Lars ruin their life. The videos Kalvin posted about them have millions of views. Thousands of people went out of their way to harass and stalk them. They were even spied upon by somebody in their own home who turned out to be posting their private information onto 4chan and Kiwi farms. So let me ask you again, Kalvin, why are these videos still public? After this little back and forth, Kalvin actually ended up DMing me and following me. I didn't really know what to do. But I felt like I had to follow him back because he followed me, and I was like, I had to follow him back because that's the rules. I debated on showing screenshots, but I don't really want to have a reputation of leaking DMs, and if I'm honest, there's not really much substance to our short interaction. The only thing I will show is this, because I think that's funny. Now, I'm not American, clearly, but I have been informed by my American pals that if an American calls you bud, it's probably intended to be passive-aggressive. But I like to take things at face value, so I'm just going to say that me and Kalvin are buds. He messaged me to say that he hadn't watched my video, cool, and that he didn't want to stress me out and he didn't want beef. I was definitely stressed out. His DM definitely stressed me out. But I have an anxiety disorder, so I probably would have been stressed out anyway. I appreciate that he clarified he didn't want beef though. I don't want beef either. I'm vegan. It's too early in the morning for jokes that bad. But whatever, I don't really know what to make of that interaction. Make of it what you will. Kalvin's initial response. 2 days after my video released on the 17th of January, Kalvin Garrah temporarily deleted his Twitter and main Instagram account and appeared to go silent. That silence did not last long, however, approximately 2 days to be exact. You know, I just realised I said approximately and then to be exact. If it's approximate, then I'm not being exact. On the 19th of January, 4 days after I released my video on Kalvin, he put out this YouTube community post. He also posted this to Instagram. Feel free to pause and read what is on screen, but for the sake of brevity and your entertainment, my dear viewer, I will summarise what he has said. Kalvin notes that within the last 3 days, he has had a breakdown, deleted his account, applied for real jobs, applied for law internships, got a real job, and then installed Instagram to say the following. Basically, he just says that social media was no longer fun for him, and because he has integrity, he would never lie about his opinions. However, he is perfectly comfortable lying about people faking their disabilities. But no, he would never lie about his opinions to save his own neck, even if they were unpopular, unlike some of his peers. He notes that he will not be naming those peers because he's not a snitch. He goes on to say that the crowd of people that doesn't like him has gotten bigger, can't imagine why, and that we're all just twisting his words. He thanks his supporters for being there for him over the years and lets the people who hate him know that despite them telling him he won't be successful, he is very proud of himself for the numerous scholarship and internship invitations he has received, as well as being top of the class, because he is just so wonderful and great. In all seriousness though, these are undoubtedly very good achievements. It's just a shame intelligence has no bearing on whether or not you're a good person. He lets us know that he will be back at some point and wants to reevaluate his beliefs without public pressure, but he will continue to post on Patreon because he loves money. Oh, no, sorry. I mean his community. He has a community on Patreon that he loves. That's basically a summary of his post. If it's not already abundantly clear, I think the post was pretty bullshit. I am sorry that he had a breakdown though, as somebody who struggles with mental health as well. I know that's not fun, and I don't wish that upon him. I don't take any pleasure knowing that people are struggling. But I think the phrasing of this post is quite manipulative, whether he intended it to be or not. He says he is struggling, but then goes on to talk about how successful he is. He does this without addressing any of the issues people have with him, rather just labelling us all as haters. He does this to escape criticism and elicit sympathy from his audience. Let me break it down for you. He is struggling, his audience can feel bad for him. He has integrity, his audience can trust him. He is successful, his audience can look up to him. The people criticising him are haters, his audience can dismiss us. He will continue to post on Patreon, his audience has more incentive to give him money. So there we are, my friends. That was a 101 guide on how influencers manipulate their audience. The scary thing is, it's rather easy to do. The influencer may not even realise they are doing it. I might be doing it. I try my best not to, I try to be critical with myself, but when you have a platform, it can be difficult to navigate power dynamics, and if you're not responsible, it's very easy to exploit. Moving on. I am not arrogant enough to assume that I am the sole cause of this post, or even a cause at all.
The main reasons why I wanted to stop making videos. It had nothing to do with people saying things about me or people making videos about me, and I don't want people to think that that's the reason, because it's just not.
But my video is the biggest video on Kalvin out there. It's got over 600,000 views, and it's pretty damning. Not to mention the fact this post was released 2 days after my video, so it is a rather large coincidence. However, I know for a fact he hasn't watched my video.
A lot of the other videos that people have made, specifically from people that I've literally never talked to in my life, are just kind of making a video because it's a popular topic. I didn't watch those because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna put myself through watching an hour-long video about how terrible I am.
So I suspect that despite the coincidence, I didn't have quite as big a role here as people give me credit for. Although it was really funny seeing posts like this. So maybe I'll take credit after all. The Instagram stories. Kalvin then went on to make a series of Instagram stories which are not great, to put it lightly. Let me play them for you now.
People are saying you're not hated for your opinions, you're hated for your behavior. Well, okay, bye then. I'm gone, peace. Hate for you for your behavior. You're right, I'm an asshole. I have been a douchebag on the internet, and I love that about myself. I'm a great person, I have so many great friends, and I don't need the internet to validate that, but I love being an asshole online. So, peace.
Now, it would be very easy for me to make fun of these videos, to make fun of Kalvin, because they are almost a bit comical. But I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I saw a bunch of people talking about these stories and having a laugh about how much Kalvin was coping. I believe that is the fashionable expression in today's online hellscape to describe someone who is compensating for their loss in rather embarrassing ways by masquerading with false confidence as a way of coping. I don't know, I'm a hermit. I struggle to keep up with all these new terms. Like I was saying, I saw a lot of people talking about how much Kalvin was coping, and I understand why they went in that direction, and I think there probably was an element of coping in there, but I think it's deeper than that. People don't tend to proudly exclaim that they enjoy being an asshole. To me, those videos look like someone who's on the verge of a breakdown. I don't know Kalvin, I don't want to speculate what's going on, but I think laughing at erratic behaviour such as that can be irresponsible because we're teaching people to find that kind of behaviour funny rather than concerning. Even if I am reading into it too much, I think my point still stands. Though I guess if Kalvin really does enjoy being an asshole, then congratulations to him, he's succeeded and he's awfully good at it. Kalvin unprivates his video on Brennen. Things soon took a darker turn when, shortly after he made that post, Kalvin unprivated his video on Brennen Beckwith. Kalvin had actually privated that video a couple months back in a live stream with Riley Grace Rochon.
You made a video about a smaller, way smaller trans YouTuber called Brennen.
That's what I'm talking about. That video that I'm probably going to take down. I was really young there, and I do disagree with a lot of what was said. I don't disagree with some of the criticisms I made. I really don't like people like that speaking up over trans masculine people. Brennen did say some just crazy shit, and they just completely misconstrued what dysphoria is. Like, it was very clearly not dysphoria.
However, it seems something about the situation had compelled him to make it public again. He claimed this was so that people could see his side of the story, watch the video for themselves and come to their own conclusions. But that's just obviously rubbish, because that video makes him look terrible. He is so cruel in it. Brennen was just living their life and enjoying themselves, and he's tearing them apart for no reason. I firmly believe he made that video public again to get back at Brennen for making their series on him. That was one surefire way he could hurt them. That was the one way he could ensure he had the last hurrah, so to speak. Since then, he has privated it again, thank God. But can you imagine how horrible that would have been for Brennen? Brennen spent 3 years of their life having to deal with the ramifications of that viral video in which Kalvin harassed them. That video had over 2 million views. They had over 2 million people laughing at them, and they had thousands of people leaving hate comments. They were publicly shamed and embarrassed, and they couldn't escape it. Imagine what it was like to have that video taken down, to have the harassment subside, to finally feel free from that video, only for it to be posted again. How cruel is that? The redemption arc Discourse. After this, Xander Hall and Riley Grace Rochon both decided to cover the situation on stream. Xander Hall and Riley are both left-wing political streamers / YouTubers who cover a wide range of different topics. Because this topic is about a trans man who specifically targets other AFAB trans people like myself, I think it is relevant to mention that Xander Hall is a cis man and Riley is a trans woman. This is not to say that you shouldn't be allowed to cover this topic if you're not a Transmasc. It's more to say that because Kalvin's rhetoric was uniquely harmful to transmasculine people, you need to be aware of this when covering it. Otherwise, you run the risk of downplaying that harm, and that is what I think happened in this situation.
Kalvin is going to continue creating content online, unless he completely leaves the platform, in which case, hooray, retributivism wins, right? Like, that's basically the only way that this works out, where there's like some kind of resolution in a retributivist kind of mentality. I mean, like, there is the whole conversation about, like, all right, if you believe in something like as crazy as, like, abolish prisons, but then don't believe in, like, something like this. You know, if we want to take everything at absolute face value, he's pushed people to suicide, he's sent harassment at people, but he has shown, like, a good faith basis that he's willing to change, then it's like, okay, then the question becomes not how long does it take to make that happen, just how to make that happen.
Xander Hall and Riley spent a large portion of that stream talking about the rehabilitation of Kalvin. To immediately go on stream and talk about rehabilitation the day Kalvin unprivates his video on Brennen is pretty darn tasteless in my opinion. Especially to imply that we need to go easy on Kalvin because you think he is changing and don't want to push him away from our side.
And
Right.
Does it excuse what he's doing now or what he's done in the past? Absolutely not. But if we're trying to get more improvement out of him, we got to do it the right way.
But if you want to take the position that there is nothing that you can do to reconcile with Kalvin, then, like, that's fine. Do that. I'm just putting the warning label on the cigarette package that, like, if you do that, you'll probably continue to go on making anti-SJW content or, like, some kind of other inflammatory content as a consequence of this. Know what you are signing up for, all right? That is the way that this goes over. And if you want to, then fine.
This is not the way to go about discussing internet harassment. The implication of this is that we cannot fully hold him accountable because it will drive him away. That's dangerous. We can't just hold people's hand and let them get away with terrible things because we want them to change. If somebody's going to lash out when they're being held accountable for their mistakes, they're not ready to change. To be clear, they didn't quite make excuses for Kalvin's actions, and I don't want people to misinterpret me and think that's what I'm accusing them of. What they did do was shift the conversation away from the victims. While they did not support his actions, immediately moving the conversation to the rehabilitation of the abuser, when the abuser has shown they are not willing to change, is essentially showing they value the abuser over the victims, especially when the victims have only just spoken up. Lars and Noah specifically hadn't had a chance to tell their stories before my video. Kalvin really messed up their lives in some pretty serious ways. At the time, they asked what I wanted to happen to Kalvin. I don't know. I'm not some moral judicator. I'm a 19-year-old who turned down a $5,000 university scholarship to go to art school, and I then took a gap year because I was feeling a little bit sad. I'm not exactly known for making the best decisions.
Cop State Mo, I'm not criticizing Kalvin because I hate him or I want him to feel like shit. I'm doing it because I don't think he should be allowed to get away with the harm that he's caused. All right, cool. Then, and if that's the case, then you're taking a retributivist mindset, and this will go on until someone leaves the platform, right? Like, I'm not trying to moralize. I'm just being descriptive. Like, I'm telling you how this will go over.
They told me I was in favour of retribution as opposed to rehabilitation, which is just not the case at all. My last video was a timeline of events. I simply documented what happened and shared the stories of some of the people who had been affected by Kalvin. But if you do want to know what I think should happen, I think Kalvin should apologise and take accountability. And I don't mean whatever bullshit that was, we'll address that in a minute. I think he needs to take down the videos that are targeting people, especially the ones about Lars. It is insane to me that these videos are still up, and it's even more insane to me that you can talk about rehabilitation when he still has videos like these up on his channel. I also think he should stay off social media for a bit. I think that would be a wise decision for him, not just the people he's hurt. The conversation around rehabilitation is a really important one to have, and I think many people misunderstood my position completely. So I want to look at rehabilitation and how this relates to the internet in terms of platforming, accountability, responsibility, and justice, especially because I think this situation points to an issue that we see in left-wing spaces a lot. There is a big conversation going on right now on whether or not it's okay for reformed Nazis, conservatives, transphobes, etc. to be allowed in left-wing spaces. These conversations tend to frustrate me to no end because I think they often lack the nuance and sensitivity that they need. Do I think rehabilitation is possible? Yes, of course I do. I would be hilariously ignorant and self-aggrandizing, not to mention hypocritical, if I thought otherwise. I used to be a trans medicalist myself, that's something I will discuss later in the video, and I've had some terrible takes in the past, as have most people. But I listened to those who knew more than me, I learnt, I educated myself, and I changed accordingly. I have seen people develop significantly over time. People can and do change. We need to allow for growth and change within people, otherwise what's the point in anything at all? We are always going to make mistakes, we are always going to do things that we shouldn't, and there are always going to be times where we are in the wrong. There's nothing we can do to escape that, it's just a part of living and being a human being. Obviously there are some mistakes that are near impossible to come back from. However, in most cases our mistakes don't have to define us forever. It's how we respond to them that determines how we, and the people impacted, move on. We are all products of our environment and the way we were raised. This is just an inescapable fact of life. Our surroundings shape who we are to such a tremendous extent that it cannot be understated. When we demonise people for who they used to be, we are often not recognising the complicated intricacies of their situation. We are overlooking the fact that many people are indoctrinated by these harmful ideologies and are victims themselves. This is an uncomfortable truth. It is easier to place all the blame and all the responsibility onto someone who has done bad things than it is to sympathise with them. But, and this is a big but, a really big one, we never put abusers over victims. Victims and marginalised people don't owe anyone forgiveness. Life is hard enough as it is, and a lot of us just don't have the mental reserves to coddle reformed Nazis, right? Their past actions may bring up traumatic memories for some of us, and, you have to put yourself first. We cannot exclude anyone from the left. The left is a political movement, it's not a social club. If you share a particular set of values and believe in a specific set of things, then congratulations, you are a leftist. This isn't the same when it comes to social spaces. Apologies for the change of clothes, it got too hot. But continuing on from what I was saying, if you have somebody in your social space that cause harm to a marginalised group, and there are people in that group that feel uncomfortable and unsafe with that person around, you need to listen to them. You need to work with them, and you need to make sure you're not sacrificing the safety of marginalised people in the name of rehabilitation. And consider this. If a reformed Nazi is getting so angry that marginalised people don't want to be around them because of their past actions, perhaps they are not so reformed after all. And as for platforming, it seems to escape a lot of people, but having a platform, having 400,000 subscribers at the time, is not a right. It is a privilege. If somebody abuses their power in such serious ways as Kalvin did, why should we give them special treatment? Why do we continue to give them a platform and let them ruin people's lives? Talking about the rehabilitation of Kalvin Garrah the day he unprivated his video on Brennen Beckwith is beyond tasteless. Rehabilitation, change, and growth is something that has to come from the person. You cannot force someone to change. You can support them in their journey, but they have to want to change themselves. You cannot begin to talk about change when the person in question has shown they're not yet willing to change. That is called siding with the abuser. Here's an example, okay? Imagine your partner's best friend punches you in the face. And you go and you tell your partner, and your partner says, "Well, that does sound rather unpleasant. But babe, I really think Stephen can change, yeah? I think he's a good person, and if you just gave him a chance, maybe you'd see that. Yeah, Stephen is a really important man, and he could do a lot of good for us if you just accept the fact he's changing. Let me help Stephen be the person I know he can be." Meanwhile, you're just sitting there like, he literally just punched me in the face 10 minutes ago, and I think I might need to go to the hospital because I have a concussion. Yeah, sure, maybe Stephen can change, but that's not really the conversation we should be having right now, after he just punched me in the face. Yeah, you see that? That's what you're doing to Brennen when you talk about Kalvin changing the day he unprivates his video on them. Now, to give Xanderhall and Riley credit where credit is due, when Brennen came on stream to ask that they stop talking about the situation, they did. And I think that's good.
Brennan's asking you to stop?
Brennan's saying to stop.
Me to stop? I mean, it seems that way, but
Yeah,
I mean,
they're saying to just stop talking about it. I mean, it's fine. I don't have really anything else to say.
But there were many other non-binary creators in chat, myself included, telling them that they were being insensitive. It shouldn't take the victim themselves coming into chat to get them to stop exploiting their story. Brennen should not have had to worry about them, people who were supposed to be on their side, on top of everything else. I'm glad that Xanderhall and Riley at least listened to Brennen, but I don't think they really understood the severity of the situation. Considering 2 of Kalvin's victims attempted suicide, and at least 3 have spoken out about how they experienced suicidal thoughts after Kalvin's videos about them, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say, we're lucky no one died. I'm not saying this to make digs at Xanderhall or Riley, I just think it's important that we have discussions about how we address these issues, to make sure we're not being like that shitty partner who enables Stephen's bullshit. Kalvin's response video. So what happened after this? Well, things began to calm down and the discourse began to subside. Kalvin said he was leaving the internet and people just sort of took that at face value and went on with their lives. But that isn't really what happened. Kalvin has not left the internet, but before he did quote-unquote leave, he made a video titled Taking Accountability. If I was going to sum up this video in 3 words, and this is putting it lightly, those 3 words would be utter fucking garbage. The video was also monetized, which is never a good look for a video in which you're meant to be taking accountability, especially when in that video you don't actually take any accountability at all.
But the overall attitude I had in the video, it's just not me now. I watched it back and I'm just thinking like, you know, there are points in here that I agree with to this day. I've never felt obligated to apologize for something if I didn't actually feel sorry for it. But hate speech, which I've never said anything that would be considered under the law hate speech.
Fuck a fat queer. Yeah, bitch. Oh, y'all gonna go off today. Fuck a fat queer. I might just go out on a limb and say that I don't really think this person should be on testosterone.
Also, I would bet at least $20 that as soon as I click the video, this guy's gonna have the tranny voice. Tranny voice.
Hey guys.
They are in a wheelchair, but can seemingly perfectly walk. I really think that it would be awesome for me to showcase them on my channel to all of you guys who really like to go and interact with these people. I don't know why you flex being in a wheelchair. I feel like you want those oppression points, those precious oppression points. Like, if you go back and watch any of my videos, I pretty much have always been under the mindset that you don't need to medically transition to be a valid trans person.
There's a thing called surgery, but you know why Brennen here doesn't want to get surgery? Because it's fucking permanent.
In a general sense, you can tell if somebody is trans or not. If you're cool with, like, in general passing and looking like a woman, despite having the monetary and, you know, social support, I'm a little skeptical. It's hard for me to believe.
But this person literally has not transitioned in any way. Presents completely as female.
I would never want to make someone's eating disorder worse.
Fuck a fat queer.
I can think of maybe why you hate your body, and I don't think it's because you're trans.
In this video, Kalvin trivializes the suffering that his victims went through, blatantly lies multiple times, and doesn't even address Lars at all. He addressed a load of criticisms that nobody really had, perhaps because he never watched my video. Maybe if he did, he'd have a better understanding at what people were actually mad about. Just a thought. Throughout the entire video, he just deflected the blame. He spent time debunking irrelevant controversies that were easy to debunk, addressing people's claims that he was anti-Semitic or racist when hardly anybody was even claiming that in the first place.
The issue is when people start spreading information that's just like blatantly false. People tried to say I was anti-Semitic. I love Jewish people. I have never once in my life said anything negative about Jewish people. And then people call me racist. Somebody edited a Confederate flag into the back of one of my videos.
During the whole time I was researching for my video on Kalvin, I only saw accusations like this a couple of times. They are certainly not the reason people are angry at him and the reason he is in such hot water, but he spends a large portion of the video talking about them rather than addressing the actual allegations. I didn't even include those accusations in my video at all because there didn't seem to be anything to substantiate them, and I doubt many people have even heard of them before. So yeah, instead of actually taking accountability, he ignores the complaints against him that are harder to debunk. He spends a lot of time talking about himself, trying to get sympathy from his audience.
I got doxxed this week. I've had so many people just like talking about me and commenting, like just like spamming the fuck out of me everywhere. So by making this, I'm just opening myself up to more of that. There's just quite a lot of people that jump on like the hate train of me, and they don't do it in a constructive way. They're not criticizing me in a constructive way. They just spam my comments, right?
He lies, he gaslights his victims, he downplays the severity of his actions, and he just doesn't take any accountability at all. Kalvin talks about Noah's suicide attempt in an incredibly insensitive way, stating that he thought the situation had been dealt with and he didn't know why people were bringing it up.
It was going around that somebody had tried to commit suicide from a video that I did about them. Now, when this first happened, I made a video discussing the situation, so I was really confused as to why that got brought back up because I thought that it had been like dealt with.
He claims that an anonymous page was posting about Noah's suicide attempt, so he had no way of knowing whether it was real, which is why he didn't take it seriously.
Because there was no real proof, right? of this even happening. It was like I posted the video, and then a couple hours later, an anonymous page started posting saying that the person had tried to kill themselves, but they were fine. And it was like right after the video was uploaded. And so at the time, I was like really, really, really overly annoyed, because I was just like, this is made up, you know, there's no proof of this. Why are people saying this?
But in reality, it was their girlfriend posting about it, and she had about 10k on Instagram. He goes on the defense rather than showing any empathy for what Noah has been through.
Ever since that has happened, there have been so many fake things spread. One being that somebody actually died, and that blatantly did not happen. I want to make that very clear. And number two, that it was a kid, or that it was like a kid that had tried to kill themselves, but the person in the video that I reacted to was like in their late 20s. So it was not a kid.
He points to people spreading misinformation, but then goes on to claim that Noah was in their late 20s when he made the video on them, but they were only 22. So spreading misinformation is okay when Kalvin's doing it? Is that it? He's shockingly dismissive of the really cruel and insensitive videos he posted on his Instagram after he was made aware of Noah's suicide attempt.
That day that it had happened, I was at Chipotle with my friend, and he was making I had like vented to him about the situation. He was making a lot of jokes, and either on my story or on his story, we had like just posted some stupid video. You know, I wasn't the one laughing in the video. It was more like him, you know, just making a joke out of like the situation. Hey Ben.
It ain't his fault if you little bitch.
Do it, baby. I know the law. I'm a criminal justice suit, baby. I know the law. I watched the video. I didn't say anything that bad. I really didn't. You know, there's no way that girl actually tried killing herself. No. Here's the thing. If somebody wants to kill themselves, they don't go on the internet screaming, I'm gonna kill myself. I killed myself. I'm going to the hospital right now. Even if this person did, in fact, try to kill herself, like at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for something that she did. I didn't fucking queer. Noah, stop. It's just I didn't do anything like legally or honestly even morally wrong.
As you can see, those videos were pretty damn awful, but he just brushes them aside and pins the blame on his friend, which I think is pretty shitty, and he only kind of begrudgingly admits that what he did was wrong.
You can believe that somebody tried to commit suicide without proof, but to then blame somebody else and to say, without a doubt, this was their fault is like a huge allegation to make against somebody.
Kalvin also clarifies that he hasn't sexually assaulted anyone because he's not a shit person.
Same with like sexual assault, which I've never been accused of sexual assault because I'm not a shit person, but...
You know, I just have to ask, since when has the bar been that low? I don't think not sexually assaulting anyone makes you a good person. But go off, King. He accuses Brennen of spreading misinformation and mentions that they were on an MTV series about being transgender, saying that he was just frustrated because they were misrepresenting what it was like to be transgender. He said that people were going to see Brennen and assume they were a trans man and think that was what all trans men were like.
And so what sparked my outrage at the video was the fact that Brennen had been on an MTV show called True Life. And people forget this. That's just people will watch a video about a trans person born female and they're not thinking, oh, are they non-binary or are they trying to be a man? It's like, oh, you're born female and you want to be a guy, or oh, you're born male and you want to be a girl.
But this is just such a ridiculous claim considering the show they were on was literally called True Life, I'm Genderqueer. It was all about being genderqueer and not fitting into the binary. It was very obviously not a show about binary trans people. But I think one of the biggest kickers in that entire video is the fact he just never once mentions Lars. He just completely ignores the entire situation with them. He never acknowledges the harm he caused by spreading lies and speculating about their disabilities. I think he relies upon the fact that most people watching that video, just like himself, haven't seen mine, so they don't know the situation and they don't know the horrible things he's done. I mean, that is a tactic a lot of YouTubers use when they apologise. They don't really address the things they've done. They don't specifically say what it is they did wrong, because if they did, their audience would know about all the terrible things they've done. It's much more effective to just play the victim, to point to cancel culture and cry that people just don't like you because they can't handle your opinions. I don't know, but it seems like taking accountability isn't one of Kalvin's strong suits. And you know what? I can sympathise with that. It can be hard to admit when we make mistakes. I think sometimes I'm not very good at it myself. But it's something I'm trying to work on, and I think maybe Kalvin should do the same. Kalvin's podcast. But after all this, Kalvin did what every straight white guy does when they get cancelled, and he started a podcast. Because of course he fucking did. Kalvin has a new channel now with nearly 30,000 subscribers where he does true crime podcasts. Quite the rebranding has taken place there, I must say. Now, being the fair, generous and unbiased person that I am, I did listen to the podcast. That was a joke, by the way. Not the bit about listening to the podcast, I did do that. The bit about being unbiased. I'm definitely very biased. Everyone's biased. It's impossible not to be biased because everyone has unconscious biases. In fact, I think one of the biggest red flags you can get from a creator is if they claim they're unbiased. If someone says to you that they're unbiased, you can just be like, rubbish, go away, liar, liar, pants on fire, get away from me, goodbye. And then voila, just like that, you've saved yourself a lot of emotional anguish in the future, and you can thank me later. Anyway, Kalvin's podcast, what did I think of it? Was it a good podcast? Yeah, it was a good podcast. The podcast on its own isn't really problematic in any way, other than the fact he's the one making it. I think if Kalvin had actually taken accountability, if he'd taken down those videos, if he'd at least tried to make up for some of the damage he'd caused in one way or another, then quitting his main channel and starting a podcast may have been a good, viable option for him. But to just turn over a new leaf like nothing ever happened, to leave those videos public while Lars and all the other people he harassed have to deal with the consequences while he moves on to a new audience who doesn't know about his past? Well, I think that's reprehensible. But I think that pretty much brings us up to speed with what happened after I released my video. Kalvin said he'd leave, had a bit of a hissy fit on Instagram, other people covered the situation in an irresponsible way, he made a shit apology, didn't take any accountability, and then started a podcast. If there was a blueprint for YouTubers who find themselves in hot water, he'd just fit right into it. It's almost funny. It probably would be funny if people hadn't been hurt so much by his content. Part 2. My experience. But now that I've deconstructed that, let's talk about me, because this is my channel after all. I've talked about this a bit on my channel before, but a lot of you are new, so I suspect there are quite a few of you who won't know this, but I used to be a trans medicalist myself. I know, how embarrassing. Now, thankfully I wasn't making videos during the time I was a trans medicalist, but I want to take you through my experience with this type of rhetoric anyway, in the hopes that it may help some of you who are in a similar situation. So I'm going to take you back in time to when I first started questioning my gender. I was about 14. It's important to note that at this point in my life I'd just moved schools. I had been bullied out of a semi-private, all-girls religious school, and I was pretty insecure in my identity. The new school I moved to, however, was a lot more accepting, so I felt safe enough to cut my hair short, which was something I'd been wanting to do for quite a while. It was around this time that I came across the term transgender. Some of the experiences trans people talked about sounded very much like my own, so I started to do some research into being transgender when I stumbled across our main man, Kalvin Garrah. He was one of the biggest trans creators on the platform at the time. When you searched up trans man, Kalvin was one of the first people to come up. So I found his videos and I started watching them and I was like, oh right, so gender dysphoria is something you need to be transgender. Okay, cool, that's good to know. And I believed him, because why wouldn't I? I was a kid, Kalvin's a wee bit older than me, he's got a big platform, he's transgender, so he must be right. Oh, sweet naive little Mo. From there on, I just sort of spiraled into this self-loathing pit of transmedicalist bullshit. I really bought into all that misinformation. I was so scared about my identity. I was terrified because I knew that I was uncomfortable with myself and my gender and my body, but I didn't want to admit I was trans. I knew deep down that I wasn't cis, but this rhetoric, transmedicalism that is so hostile towards non-binary people, scared me so much. I convinced myself that I had to choose between living as a trans man or a butch woman. In my head, those were the only two options. I couldn't be non-binary because nobody would accept that. That was just too crazy. I would be ostracized and people would think I was unhinged. I had to fully transition into a man, or I had to live a life as a woman, uncomfortable in my body and my gender identity. I would see gender non-conforming trans people, I'd see a person who was comfortable in their body, and I'd be like, wow, how can they be comfortable with those parts of their body and claim to be a trans man when I, who is not even a trans man, is so uncomfortable with them? That was genuinely a thought that went through my head. It was so ridiculous. I projected my own insecurities onto other people, and it's something I feel guilty about to this day. You cannot know whether somebody experiences dysphoria just by looking at them. You can't decide who's trans based on the way they dress. If somebody feels comfortable identifying and expressing themselves in a certain way and they're not harming anyone, who are you to say otherwise? I do want to make clear that, at least to my knowledge, I never harassed anybody or left any shitty comments. I didn't go around and spread my harmful ideas. It was more of a private inner turmoil. I didn't have a platform, and that's the difference between me and somebody like Kalvin. That is why my journey away from transmedicalism is so much easier. I only have to work through my own internal struggle. I don't have to make amends in the way that he does. I did not spread this rhetoric to millions, and I didn't target innocent people. I was just a kid who consumed harmful media, as I suspect many of you were too. And you know, we can't make excuses for ourselves, but we do have to be kind to ourselves and recognise the reasons we went down that path. I was drawn in by a narrative that seemed so convincing. It really gave me a reason for why I felt this way. You know, I was just born differently. I had a medical condition. Gender dysphoria gave me legitimacy, and it's so sad. Because imagine basing your gender identity on your suffering. I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty fucking dark place to be. I didn't really know what to do. I flip-flopped in my head between being a trans man and being a butch woman. I changed my name to Mo, but I told everyone it was a nickname. I presented very masculine, and most people who saw me on the street just thought I was a boy. I was so lost, and I didn't have any answers. I was still so resentful of trans people who didn't fit my criteria of what it meant to be trans, and I was no closer to figuring myself out. I remember one night just lying in bed and then suddenly realising that I wasn't very nice. That was about the worst realisation I could have, because I've been bullied quite a lot over the years, and I've always wanted to be nice to others, but the thoughts in my head, they weren't the thoughts of a nice person, and realising that was like a kick to the stomach. I just lay there for a really long time, and I thought, you know what, I've just got to try and be nice. So as weird as it sounds, I made a conscious decision to try and be kind. Because I don't want to live in a world where people judge others for their expression. As stupid as it sounds, that was a pretty powerful revelation to me, and I really tried to change the way I thought and the way I saw the world from there on out. And you know what? It's made me feel so much better about myself. You know, my mental health is not the greatest, it's never been the greatest, but what I will say is that now, even when I'm depressed, even when I hate myself, even when I've made mistakes and I haven't treated somebody else as well as I should have, at least I know I'm trying to be nice and that I care about others. And that's something no one can take away from me. After this realization, I really started to do some self-reflection and unpack a lot of my internalized transphobia, which I still struggle with today. I started watching more positive trans and non-binary creators like Ash Hardell, Milo Stewart, and Corvidae, to name a few, and I started to feel a lot more confident in myself, like I was allowed to be non-binary. I mean, look at all these cool people out there living their lives being unapologetically non-binary. It was really empowering, and eventually, after a lot of unpacking up here, I was able to accept myself for who I am. So, that was the process I went through. That was the journey I went on. It's a journey that, sadly, I don't think is very unique to me. I think a lot of people have dealt with very similar experiences with transmedicalism. Lots of young trans people really struggle with internalized transphobia and not being able to accept themselves. It's not something I think anyone should have to go through. Yeah, I learned from it, but I don't think young trans people should have to learn how to not perpetuate transphobia. I don't think transmedicalism should have been a part of my growth. It was, and I can't escape that, but I don't think it should have been. I don't think it needed to be. But unfortunately for me, given the political climate of YouTube and the internet at that time, transmedicalism was pretty much inescapable. It was the prevailing narrative in many online trans spaces, and if you so much as said a word against it, you were opening yourself up to a barrage of hate. And as someone who grew up in Dunedin, New Zealand, there weren't many resources for me to access. There weren't really any real-life trans spaces for me. It's no wonder so many people went through a shitty true scum phase when that was the first exposure to being transgender that many of us had. But I'm hoping that things are about to change because I can already see them changing. The narrative is shifting. People are no longer subscribing to such harmful ideologies. Transmedicalism is dying. Its shelf life is limited, and although it is still very strong and present in the media, although it is still wreaking destruction, it is weakening. I think it is beginning to lose its power, and I hope it will continue to do so. I have gotten so many messages from young LGBT people saying that I've helped them accept themselves, and I don't really even know what to say to that, honestly. It just gives me so much hope for the future, and I am so glad that I've been able to help people like this, and I'm forever grateful that you've given me this platform. You know, I really hope that I'm able to use this responsibly. I hope this next generation of trans people can feel more comfortable exploring their identity than I did. Final thoughts. So, this concludes my final video on Kalvin Garrah. I have no idea what the future will hold, but I feel I've closed this chapter now and I don't plan on making another video on him. You know, I do worry when making these videos that I'm unintentionally doing the very thing I'm criticising. Kalvin harassed all these people, am I doing the same thing by making a video on him? I've thought about it a lot, and I don't think I am. We need to have these conversations. Noah, Lars, and all the other people Kalvin affected need to have their voices uplifted. Kalvin shouldn't be able to get away with treating people the way he did. I don't want my videos to cause harassment. I don't want people to watch my videos and harass the people I'm talking about. If you watch my video on Kalvin and you go and harass him, you've missed the entire point of my video. There is a big difference between criticism and harassment or bullying. Kalvin crossed that line. I'm not attacking Kalvin for anything he can't change. I'm talking about his behaviour and the impact his actions had on others. This is an important conversation to have, and I hope I've done it responsibly. I can't control what you do after watching my video, but I do have some level of responsibility over my audience. So I'm going to say this once, and I hope I won't have to say it again. Please don't send anyone harassment, especially not in my name. A lot of people are probably going to read into what I've said, say I've misinterpreted Kalvin and that I've exaggerated the harm he caused. I've spoken to his victims, I've had long conversations with them. Noah, Lars, Brennen, Ashton. I consider them to be my friends, and I can say with complete confidence that I don't think I've exaggerated anything at all. A lot of people are going to say I'm obsessed with Kalvin. I'm not obsessed with him, but I am fascinated by how his rhetoric spread like wildfire amongst young, impressionable transmascs. And I am sorry for all the people he hurt because of it. A lot of people are going to think I hate Kalvin. No, I don't hate Kalvin. We're buds, remember? All I feel for Kalvin is sad, because no happy person makes that many videos tearing other people down for the way they express themselves. Do I think he can change? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know him. It's not really my place to make any judgment calls there. I like to think that most people can change, because if we don't have faith in other people, how can anyone have faith in us? What I do think, though, is that we can't just forget the damage that he caused. If we don't learn from the past, we will repeat the same mistakes in future. Storm Ryan, one of Kalvin's friends who participated in a lot of the same harassment Kalvin did, recently came out with an apology video, and I think it's good. I think it's a really good and really genuine video.
Put it simply, I've done some fucked up things. I've made some fucked up videos. I've promoted fucked up influencers, and I've bullied other influencers completely off the internet. Some of those people had to end up going to therapy. Like, I was just like unbelievably so rude and mean-spirited that I didn't see the people I was targeting as people, as fucked up as that is.
I briefly mentioned Ryan a couple of times in my part 1, and if you want to see somebody genuinely take accountability, watch that video. The link is in the description. But what did Ryan do right? Well, Ryan removed all his harmful content, he apologised privately to the people he hurt directly, he took some time away from the internet, and then made a public apology. It's really refreshing to see that. I think Ryan shows that change is possible, and I hope that can encourage some other people to do the same.
I use transmedicalism as a weapon against non-binary people because for a long time I felt like they made my identity invalid in the eyes of cis people, which is stupid. Obviously, if someone is transphobic, they're just transphobic because they hate trans people.
Unfortunately, I don't think this is something we can expect to see from Kalvin, at least not anytime soon. In the last couple of weeks, he's frequently gone on little true scum rants, repeating the same rhetoric. He does seem to have toned it down ever so slightly, and a few of his talking points have shifted, but don't be fooled. The ideology itself is harmful, no matter how you dress it up. He recently made some tweets saying he was too harsh in a lot of the videos he made. I think harsh is a bit of an understatement, and I just question why they're still on his channel if that's really the case, but whatever. Maybe you think I'm being too sensitive. It's okay though, being the sensitive snowflake SJW cancel culture woke scold tone policing scum that I am, I'm sure I won't be hurt by this for long. After all, there's always something else to be offended by. But that's all I have to say for now. If you want to help support me, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, that really helps. You can follow me on social media, I'm Cops Hate Mail on everything. My Patreon and PayPal links are in the description as well if you want to help out financially. No pressure, but any little bit helps. I'll see you in my next video where I'll be deconstructing transmedicalism in depth. But until then, thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see ya. Quite as big a role here as people— oh my god, that's such a big bee. That's like a queen bee. Blimey, it's like that big. Meow. Bloody, who the fuck's making that big noise? Oh. At least to my knowledge, I never— oh my god, there's a wasp. Oh no.